Thank you for joining us for this exciting new chapter in my life. I'm so excited to be doing this. It's our first episode of Harolyn. Yes, I actually named the show after myself. And I'm really excited to be talking about things that are going to be helpful to those in the community, hopefully in the world, who knows. I'm just really excited about today's show. I wanted to talk about how can you have bliss in a relationship where there's argument. What does that look like? And so my guests today are going to help me to figure out if that is possible and what we have to do in order to make that work for us. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Harolyn. In the first experiment that I found, researchers asked 455 married participants to make a list of resolutions that they felt would help in their relationship. What was interesting is that many of them said that conflict in the relationship was a big issue. The blaming game was a big issue. I think we've all done that before. And then the biggest one was communication more with me. So I don't always believe in statistics, but there might be a little bit of something to this one. So today we're going to talk about how do you get past these barriers and get past all of those things in order to be able to have some bliss. And I am super duper excited about having my guest, Mr. Samuel or Sam Seals. Thank you, Sam, for agreeing to come on the first episode.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited. So we're just going to go right into this. And, I've been married for a long time, as I know that you have, and it'll be coming on 30 years next year for me. Wow. And one of the things that I realized was that, when the book came out, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, it really didn't do justice to relationships.
Sure.
It, I think, kind of put people in a position where they had to choose one or the other. So I want to talk about, what do you do when you've been married that long and you still don't always see eye to eye and you still have conflict? So my first question today is, how can we stop the adversarial behavior towards one another?
Yeah. Well, I want to first qualify what I'm about to say.
Okay.
I'm not saying this as an expert. I'm not saying this because of any external research, merely in my own experiment. I use myself as an experiment.
Well, that'll work.
Generally, I find when there's a disagreement that escalates into an argument, the argument is not the problem, or the situation at hand is generally not the problem, but it is a gross dissatisfaction down in the heart of one or both parties based on a whole plethora of disagreements or problems between the two. Either there have been misunderstandings or hard words spoken that cannot be taken back. Just because you say, I'm sorry, it does not take away the pain of what was said. Or it can be a situation where one party feels like they are oppressed and unable to really be who they desire to be at this stage in their life because they're being perceived by their partner as the little girl or little boy they married.
Yeah.
So generally, in my experience, the problem at hand is not really the problem. It's the life experience and the interactive, personal interactive, how should I put it, problematic discussions and breaks in a relationship, broken relationship. Can I go a little deeper?
Yes.
Okay. Harolyn, I discovered that when two people get married, they're getting married, if they get married for the right reason, there's an experience called the in-love experience. That in-love experience will cause individuals to ignore all the very small things, very small nuances in the other person's personality that they don't like. For instance, you get together with your mate, and let's say you've been married for 3-4 weeks. You wake up and there are toothbrushes laying on the counter. It's got toothpaste on it. There's toothpaste spattered on the mirror, and all you can see when you go in there is that this reminds you of this great individual you're married to.
Yeah.
Well, 6 years from now, you go in that same bathroom, you see that spatter on the window or on the mirror, and you see the toothbrush laying on the counter, and you see his underwear on the floor, and you're upset. Well, that didn't make you upset. Actually, you lost the in-love experience.
So, and I guess I'm just sitting here like mesmerized, because I think that we've all experienced that. I love him. I remember when my husband and I were in that dating stage, and I wanted to go and clean up his place, and I wanted to make sure that I cooked for him. 30 years later, I walk through the kitchen and I do not go washing unless I have to. So there's something that happens in there. Why does that happen? Why do we have that moment where we not fall out of love, but
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Have you ever had a person either on the job or at church or what have you, a person that really didn't like you very much?
Yes.
Yeah. And no matter what you said to that person, the person misinterpreted it.
Everything. Yeah.
Because they really didn't like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something that made them uncomfortable about you. Well, I've discovered that there's an experience called breaches. It's an experience called breaches. So if you and me are friends and we're talking, we're having a good interpersonal relationship, and something happens. Let's say you find out I've been talking about your personal business behind your back, and you love me, and so now you're hurt. We're just talking about friendship, not even married, but interpersonal relationships, I think, are primarily the same.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this breach happens. Now there's a wall of containment between you and me. I'm suspicious of you, you're suspicious of me. So now when I see you, I used to say, "Hey, Harolyn, that skirt looks really nice." And you would say, "Thank you, girl, that's nice. I appreciate it." But now when I say that skirt is very nice, you're suspicious that I'm making fun of you.
Yes.
Because we have a broken relationship.
Wow.
And so now I'm communicating to you through this wall of containment, this breach, this rift in the good relations between the two of us. And so what is said through that wall, it seems to be interpreted by the wall. So if I said you look good, in your mind, you're saying
you think it's something ugly. Yeah.
Same thing in a relationship.
Wow.
Between a husband and a wife. If you and me are having good relations and we're married, and let's say we're having a discussion and we're totally in disagreement over the discussion. Let's say that it's about child rearing, and we're both reared differently, and it leaves that whole discussion because both of us are in our emotions. We're not necessarily trying to bring about a solution anymore because I'm angry because we cannot arrive at a solution or a convergence. And so now we start to pick at each other. Do you remember when?
Yes.
You said this. You remember when you did this? So we get this thing escalating. We have this big explosion, this argument. So we just fed that whole breach. Now everything we do and every conversation we have is had through that wall of containment. It's skewed.
And I get that. And even at 50 and even being married for almost 30 years and being in a relationship, I get that. I understand that. But in that moment, when that toothpaste has been sitting on that mirror just a little bit too long, all of those moments of I remember when you used to bring me teddy bears, and I
Sure.
remember,
Sure.
you getting up, and I remember all of those things have flapped out of the window because now all I can see is, as you said, those moments of hurt.
Exactly.
How do you move past that? What do you do when you say, I want to have a blissful relationship? I want to have a relationship with my best friend, but you are so angry at the other person that sometimes, for some people, just the sight of them
Sure.
creates that emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
So how does a person get past that part?
Yeah. First thing, there has to be a mediator between two parties in a relationship. And that mediator has to be perfect. And both of us have to aspire to a lifestyle, a way of communicating, a way of loving that supersedes our own natural ability. And it has to be that particular person that's between you and me if we're a couple. That person has to be Jesus.
Absolutely.
And so with that in mind, if both of us, our greatest desire is to please him, then there's going to be a convergence. And number one, I'm going to know that I'm more powerless than ever when I'm in my emotions. And I'm most powerful when I'm in the spirit. That's number one. And so in the spirit, I must repent first to you for having broke the relationship. And then you have to be willing at this point too to please God as well. You're not pleasing me. And then you must also repent.
So repentance is key to making the relationship work, but also saying to, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, saying to God, this is what we're willing to do in order to have the kind of relationship I think the Bible talks about, that agape love and loving the person beyond, you hurt and you hurt my feelings last night when you said my toes were ugly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What you're actually saying is that I realize that I don't have the ability to have a perfect relationship with another person because I'm not perfect.
Okay.
So good. I need a perfect God in order to make this relationship perfect. And then I have to know that there's a possibility. See, the world says this: you should agree to disagree when you can't really reach a convergence. And see, if you and me both ascribe to that, we'll never agree on anything.
Where we need to go. Yeah.
But we can always agree because the word is perfect. And if both of us are looking to please God, we're going to converge at him, and he's perfect. That's number one. We've repented, and we've decided that he's going to be the point of our convergence. That's number one. And then number two, we're going to act like the word is true. You ever looked in the mirror and just poked at yourself, just kind of laugh? Can you do that for a good period of time and not laugh, actually? And so I believe that a good relationship, a God relationship, must be faith. You must faith the relationship. See, because you're not always going to be pleased with the person, but you're pleased with God.
Wow.
And so you act like the word is true. When I'm communicating with you, I'm only seeing the best things in you. And I'm only going to push the best buttons because I know where all of them are. See, if you're my spouse, I know where all the buttons are. I know the bad buttons, I know the good buttons.
So we need to be, what I'm also hearing is that we need to be invested, not just in the relationship in each other, but have an investment in God. Okay.
Absolutely. And then there's a supply you can actually draw from, a reservoir you can draw from. And so with that in mind, my job now is to make certain that I speak to the queen in you. And I like speak
that.
To the fool.
Say that again. Say that queen part again. I like that. That was good. Yeah, that was good.
My job is to always speak to the queen.
That's good.
And if by chance I push the fool button, it's my job to correct that and to fix that right away.
Yeah.
Your job is to make certain that you have the fool in the cage.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So that I can have conversation with the queen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just gave me chills. Okay. Yeah. So okay, say that part again. I want to absorb that one. That was really good. So when you say the fool is the person who shows up and is wounded and acting out of character. Is that?
We're all wounded.
Okay.
We're all wounded, and we all have an eros nature. We all have a natural nature. The natural nature says, listen, if you hit me, I want to hit you back. If you hurt me, I want to hurt you back. Everybody's got that instinct. And so the scripture says, and I think it's Romans 8, around Romans 8, 9, it says, if be that the Spirit of the Lord is in you, you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, right? And so if I'm in the Spirit, then I am a powerful, creative being right now while I'm having conversation with you. And so if we're having a conversation, I'm creating something right now. Proverbs 18:22, I think, and 23 says that death and life's in the power of the tongue. And those that love it must be satisfied with what he actually created right now with his mouth. And so what my job is now is to know I'm about to create something. What do I want to create? Do I want to nurture and encourage a queenly response, or do I want to nurture and encourage, or even incite, a foolish response?
Wow.
And make new breaches that both of us have to press through.
And so really it is just, as our moms used to tell us, think about what you're going to say before you say it.
Even greater than that.
Okay.
Because it requires a lifestyle change for the two of us. And since we're partners, my mate and I, we're partners. We have to desire the same thing. If both of us desire to please God, then we're going to fill ourselves in our spare time, in our reservoir. We're going to fill it so that when we begin to have relationship with one another and conversation with one another, we have something to draw from.
Okay.
So there's a requirement then for us to have a healthy prayer life and a healthy study life, to study to show ourselves approved unto God.
Wow. Wow. And so once we get that in line, once we understand the repentance, once he understands, her too, but once he understands that he should be doing things to inspire and want the queen to come forth more so than the foolish person. Then once we understand that, then what I'm understanding is that then we have a responsibility, a duty to each other to continue that. Correct?
Absolutely. To reproduce that and to constantly reproduce that. In fact, my whole purpose need to be to please my wife. I know that sounds weird.
I love it.
And today,
all the women out there would probably love that too. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And her job then is to allow me to do that.
Ooh.
And you notice I'm putting all the responsibility on the male.
I love it.
Because God made him first.
Yeah, that's good.
And God made him first to be a leader, not for him to oppress, not for him to beat his chest and say, I'm the king. In actuality, God made him a priest first. When a spouse can begin to experience the love of the priest, she will respect the king. But if I come in trying to subject her to the king, there's no quality, there's no basis by which she should follow me. And so now there's going to be a rejection and another breach.
Wow.
In the relationship. And it's my responsibility.
Well, I tell you what, if people do not get bliss out of this information, it is because they do not want it. You have been phenomenal. You have been absolutely phenomenal. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Hey, my name is Chandler Rogers, and I'm here to share with you a little bit about myself and my Thrive experience. I'm 25 years old, and recently I was on the cover of Success from Home magazine, July 2015, for Lavelle Thrive. I began using the product March 2014. It was one of those things I wanted to have like this huge transformation on Lavelle and using all the products. So it was about the beginning of January of this year, I committed myself. I was like, I am about to take this thing to another level. I knew that I love to train, I love to eat good. You know, I guess you would say I'm about to go hard. I love this company and love these products. For me, it has changed my life, and I never plan to ever come off the product. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me, visit my website, chanrogers.com, my Facebook fan page. and I will be able to get in touch with you.
It's hard to move forward if there's nothing left to give. All About Art, an Atlanta 48-hour film project.
We're back, and thank you again for tuning in. This guest, I'm gonna try to be as serious as I'm already smiling with Phillip Box. Phillip and I have been friends for many years, and he knows a little something about relationships. I've talked to him a couple of times, and so the first question I'm going to ask you just right out the gate is, what if the partner does not want to communicate? What do you do?
I think the most important thing that we can do is, of course, work on figuring out ways to communicate. And when somebody doesn't want to talk, and that happens to all of us probably at different times, where we want to just sit there quietly, or maybe I'm mad, and because I'm angry, and now I don't want to talk.
That face looks so familiar. Yeah, I've seen that face.
That happens a lot. So when those kind of things happen, I think the best thing to do, maybe first and foremost, would be to take a step back and take a deep breath. Don't communicate for a minute.
Wow.
It's okay to not talk for a minute. As a matter of fact, I think we have a problem with awkward silence.
Yes.
Most of the time when you go somewhere and they say, we're going to have a moment of silence, it actually lasts about 38 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's about as long as anybody can stand it. So sometimes just waiting them out might work. That the other person might respond with something. I know sometimes we do that. I might say, well, I don't even want to talk about it. And about 30 seconds later, one of us is ready to talk about it. So I think maybe the first thing to do is just stop and give it some time. One of those things that is tough for people to learn is patience.
Yes.
And so we have to be patient with each other, just like we have to be patient with all the situations in life. A second thing that we might do is pray about it. One of the things that we do is we ask for things a lot of times when we need them. Those emergency kind of prayers. We'll throw up a quick one, when we meet the police officer. Lord, help him not to get me. Or
I don't want to take it today.
A student who hadn't studied for a test. Lord, help me to pass this test. Right? But what if we step back and say, Lord, help me to know what to say.
Wow.
Again, I think that's an important kind of approach to things. So, one, we're going to be patient. Two, we're going to pray about it before we do anything. And then third, I think what we do is we respond in love with kind words, saying things. Just because something might be true, or just because something you feel like needs to be said, doesn't necessarily mean that it does need to be said. A lot of times people say, well, it's the truth. Well, that doesn't mean you shouldn't just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. And a
lot of times we ought to just be quiet.
Yeah. One of the things that I've often said is that it's always your perception and the other person's reality. Right. And so, my husband and I have this thing where I've learned after 30 years, don't push. People will say, well, is he going to come to such and such? I'm like, he's not that person. He's good. And so, well, you should make him come. Well, I've learned after 30 years, don't make anybody do anything that takes them out of their comfort zone, because they're going to be miserable all evening, which means you're going to be miserable. So that gets me to my the next question. How do we communicate more? How do we talk about those things that maybe are bothering us, or things that we want to see more in the relationship, especially if you have someone who is not good at communicating?
My wife would say you're talking to the wrong guy. She says sometimes I don't tell her things. And so I think two things have to happen here. One is we have to be very intentional about being clear in what we're saying. Most of the time we assume people understand or know what we're talking about. For example, somebody's giving directions, and they'll say, well, it's over there by such and such. Well, I may not even know where such and such is.
Yeah.
As a beginning frame of reference, much less and it would be a lot simpler to say, this is the address. If you give me the address, I can find the place.
Yeah.
So instead of giving me reference points, and I understand some people communicate with those reference points, and some people prefer those reference points. But let me come back and say, okay, so it's such and such an address. Now tell me exactly how to get there. Then you're open to give clear directions as far as some landmarks around where I might be going to. And so don't just jump to a conclusion and assume that I know right where you're talking about in every aspect of our relationship. Sometimes preachers are quick to assume everybody knows the Bible story, or a particular verse, a particular reference. School teachers are quick to assume everybody can read that word or understand that math problem. We probably ought to all back up and say, okay, let's make sure that it's clear. One of the things that I do and I work really hard on is communicating with people. And one of the things I've found out is you don't assume that somebody knows anything. You make sure you tell them and walk through the process step by step, very clear, even if it's something you think is kind of useless information. Let's make it clear. So when it comes to my wife, it's important for me not just to assume that she knows I'm going to such and such a place, but say, hey, you remember I'm going to this place at this time, and here's where it is, what's going on, or whatever. So just the clarity in the thing. And then on the other hand, we have a responsibility as the listener to this communication to say, hey, tell me that again, or I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes it works both directions. See, the person that's receiving the information is also hesitant to say, you're going to have to tell me the address because I don't know that reference point. And especially if it's a reference point that you think I ought to get. One of your previous guests was talking about that earlier, that idea of just assuming that somebody knows where you're coming from. But the fact is, you both grew up differently, you both came from different places. We might have driven past the same place multiple times, and you saw one thing and I saw something totally different. Now, of course, everybody would know that I was right about what we saw.
Oh,
but,
wow. Okay. I got that.
You see how this goes.
Yeah,
right?
I see.
And so that's the case with our spouses and in every relationship, really, that we're dealing with.
Well, and I would think that those same skills, when I hear parents say, well, my children won't talk to me or we don't communicate well, I would think that those same skills can be applied to those relationships as well, that it's not just in a marriage, but it can be anything that you want to be healthy.
Absolutely. And I might even recommend a couple of things that you do. One thing that I do and practice is repeating what the other person is saying. So when that person is talking, I'm in my head saying those same words to make sure that I'm getting it and actually focusing and looking at that other person instead of looking at other things. We have a tendency to be looking at our phones or looking at the computer screen or just looking around at other things. And this person is talking to me, and so it might be as simple as me looking at her and acknowledging that I heard her. That might be enough.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Repeating those things in your head as they're saying them, doing some things like that to be intentional. I think the point of what we're talking about today is that idea of being intentional.
Absolutely. Well, you've been great. I didn't know all this was in you. We've known each other for years. This is fabulous. I'll have to tell Paige. You're just fabulous. Kudos. Yeah, I enjoyed it. We'll be back after this break.
You're going places, and I'm there.
Do you have any art classes?
Wednesdays at 6. It's Monday.
Art is all about art.
Stop asking me questions. I don't have to explain everything I said.
Sometimes that's the problem in this romance story of art, of selfishness and absence.
Seriously, Art, do you even want to do this anymore? I miss you here.
It's hard to move forward if there's nothing left to give. All About Art, an Atlanta 48-hour film project.
IDPA at Tri-State Gun Club.
The most fun you'll ever have shooting. Legal.
Go to tristategunclub.net and look for IDPA on the fourth Saturday
every month. The most fun you'll ever have shooting. Legal.
I wanna shout out
I had such a great time talking to Philip and Sam, but I am really, really excited about having a woman's perspective. And for that, we have Miss Angela Seals. Thank you, Angela. How are you? Are you ready to? Are we ready? See, we've cleared the men folk out, and we can really talk about this.
I'm glad they broke the ground up.
Yeah, they did. One of the things that we talked about was that forgetting thing. And let's talk about that for a minute. How do you forget when he has said something to you that brought out that fool, as Sam said, in you? How do you get past that?
That's it. It's not a forgetting. It's a getting past it.
Okay.
Because you don't develop amnesia.
Mm-hmm.
I think in anything where there's been a breach or hurt with any relationship, you will remember it, but it does not affect you the way it did before.
Wow. Okay.
You will say, I can, and that's when you're at a place of victory, and you're not at a place of defeat. So when you can talk about a thing, like if you had a best friend who betrayed you, if you can say, my best friend betrayed me, but this is how I came through it, and can still love the person and walk in forgiveness with the person. So forgetting is, again, a perception. So it happened, but it does not affect you negatively anymore.
Wow. Wow.
That's it.
I think that for a lot of people, that becomes, one of those things in a relationship, to be perfectly honest, that, he did this or he did that. And so we're going to talk about a subject that, a lot of women have faced. And that's when a spouse has cheated. How do you find bliss in a relationship where somebody has taken away the trust that you had for them?
I think what you have to do, you have to look at both sides of that. Why did the person cheat? What role did you play in it? Because see, in a relationship, it's more than one person in a relationship.
Absolutely.
So you need to look at both parties and you make a decision. Am I going to move forward, or am I going to drive looking in the rearview mirror? Or am I going to drive looking through the windshield and move on and have trust in God that I can get past all of this? So I think it's a matter of decision. And you make a choice. You just say, okay, we're going to get past this and we're going to move forward, and we aren't going backwards. Because if you keep looking back at a thing, you're stuck right there.
Absolutely.
So if you had a hurt in 1986, guess what? You had Arrested Development in 1986. So what you want to do, you want to live in the now. You don't want to live in the past. You learn from your past and glean from it and get wisdom from it, but you don't want to live back there.
And I know that we know that, and again, we're being real here.
Exactly.
And we say that we forgive, and what I think is that we forgive on the surface until the person does something else. And then all of the things that we said that we forgave them for began to bubble up.
We haven't forgiven them.
We haven't forgiven.
We haven't forgiven because we have not gotten to the core and the root of it all. See, what we have to realize is if we have a relationship with the Lord and we want Him to forgive us of the things that we've done and we've said, well, how can we hold somebody else in a place unless we stay there ourselves? So what we have to do is ask God to help us to get past that, and He can do it.
And do you believe that there can be bliss or happily ever after?
Oh, yes.
After there's been infidelity or brokenness in a relationship?
I believe it. I believe that a marriage or relationship, especially a marriage, can be like heaven on earth. You have to want it to be that. And you have to think of ways and ask God to help you make it that way. But if you continue to look and say, well, you remember when you did. Well, does God remember when you were just a mess?
That's good.
Because we've all been a mess.
Ooh, a hot mess.
Yeah. So we just say, okay, help me to get past myself. Because, in relationships and dealing with people, we've all had hurts. We've all had damage. What do you do with it? Do you use it to help somebody else get past theirs? You can't help anybody else if you're broken yourself.
That's true. That's true.
Hurting people cannot bring anybody else any healing. Until you're at a place of victory, then you can help somebody else. But until that time, you can't do it.
How do you keep that marriage that's been around for 30, 40 years. How do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it new?
What Sam and I always talk about is we have to have a date night.
Oh, cute.
We have to always be courting. You can't always just get so accustomed to them, like, well, you know, we've been at you. You see me smell my stinky feet. You know, just just fall over and just, you know, just look crazy. No, I think you always have to be very mindful that you want to look your best. You want to smell your best. You want to be your best for your spouse. That's both men and women. You know, you don't want to look like Medusa when your husband comes home. You want to look pretty, you know, for him. You want to do that. You want to fix up, and you want to go on a date at least once a week. Have date night. Everybody else stays at home.
I'm just writing that down so I can tell my husband.
Get a date night,
Okay.
and then you go out and you just court each other and just love each other, and seeing that keeps it exciting, and do things together.
You know, when we evacuated, my husband was still in New Orleans, and he would come down every month, and it was so great. I would tell people it was like having a boyfriend all over again. You know, we would sneak off. I won't tell you where we would sneak off to. We won't put that all out there.
Okay.
But we would, you know, we would sneak off. How do you have bliss? Because one of the other problems that you see a lot of times in relationships are when there are children involved. And you know, we as mothers, our little Pooh Bears and our little babies, they, you know, my mother used to say, "Don't say anything to Harolyn's children," and it used to make me feel bad because these are his children too. But you know, Mama's different. So how do you keep that from being a problem in the relationship and creating arguments and problems?
Keep this in mind: when they are grown and gone, you are going to be there with that person.
Wow.
And you want to know who you're married to.
That's good.
So aside from the children, you only get one husband.
That's it.
Children can't be your husband.
Yeah.
They can't be your wife. So you have to know, this is my friend, my best friend, because Sam and I are best friends. These are my children. They're going to grow up. They're going to marry and have spouses of their own. And they may not even remember to call their mom.
That's true.
Today or the next day or
That's
the day
true.
after that. But you want to have your best friend there with you. So you have to set aside time for your best friend. Because if not, you can get consumed in work, motherhood, all these other stuff.
Grandbabies.
Busyness, just busyness. So number one, after God, is your spouse. And then you'll take care of your children and you'll take care of all that other stuff. But you have to make sure you prioritize.
So tell me what the word bliss, if you're going to put it in a relationship, what does that look like to you?
I think it looks like when my husband walks in the room, my heart still flutters.
Wow.
See, that's blissful.
I know.
And I'm so glad to see him,
I know.
even if it was, I saw him that morning. But when I see him again that evening, like, hey, honey, it's good to see you. See, that's bliss.
Okay.
And I can talk on the phone with my husband for hours.
Do you have those moments where you pick up the phone at the same time to call each other?
Oh, yes.
My husband
I was
and
just
I do
about to
that.
call you.
We're starting to look alike.
You see, that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you like
Okay.
the same things.
Yeah.
And I like the way Sam's voice sounds. So I can just talk to him forever.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, mine doesn't talk a whole lot, but still,
Yeah.
you know, we talk about some things. We both like cartoons. That's a little
See?
kid in us.
Sweet stuff.
You know, and then we've been through some stuff together. I mean, this was the person who taught me how to drive a car and how to ride a bicycle, and has protected me. And so, you know, I call him Daddy. It creeps my children out.
Oh.
When I say Daddy, and they're like, "Ugh, that's just wrong. I don't even know why you do that." But you know, it's just one of those terms of endearment.
For
It
you
really
guys.
is. And you know, I look at his parents who've been married, you know, almost 50 years, or a little over 50 years, and so it's. I think part of that too is finding those relationships that are working.
Exactly. And see, the good thing about Sam and I, both our parents were married over 60 years.
Wow.
So we had great role models. So this is what we declared when we got ready to marry each other. Divorce was never an option for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we had been in relationships, in marriages before that did not work. So we said to each other, divorce is not an option for us. We're going to grow old and sit on the front porch and drink lemonade.
Well, my husband says that, but he also says it's cheaper to keep her. So I don't quite know what that means,
Well,
but in
it's all
any
right, children
case,
are grown and gone.
well, I know, and that's a great thing. Now we have puppies, and
We don't have any puppies.
well, yeah, we have puppies.
No, we have
anyway,
to see
that's a
about
whole
those.
nother show to do on people and their puppies.
No.
You have been a phenomenal guest.
well,
I've
you're
enjoyed
phenomenal.
this. I'm so glad to have had you
Oh,
as one of
yeah.
my first guests. And so we know at the end of this that it is possible
It is.
to have a relationship filled with bliss. And so that's what we want to leave people with.
All right.
Thank you for joining us. I look forward to the next show. And I'm so excited that I've had wonderful guests, Miss Angela Seals,
Thank you.
Sam Seals, and then of course, Mr. Phillip Box. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for the next show. Thanks.